everybody. Welcome to Propeller. I hope you're all having a great day. Woohoo! Let's bring that energy up. Woo! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Could you sit here? Thank God we're not competing with Gary V, who was on the other stage just a few minutes ago, and we have some friendly faces here in the panel. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Sarah Walker Santana, co-founder of Digital Flash, and we are a digital experience agency, and we help clients and brands tell their stories on and offline. And today I'm going to be talking to a wonderful group of women all about FinTech and what they're doing in their businesses. We've got some startups on the stage, as well as some venerable institutions. So who's our audience? Is this a startup audience? Can I get a show of hands? Great. And who else is in the financial space? All right. So a few of you. Well, hopefully we are going to be educating you about FinTech and what is going on in the space, and you get some wisdom from us because we are on the stage of wisdom. First, I'm going to introduce my panelists. I've got Sherry from Prudential, and I've got Shannon from Your Financial Lane, and Krista from P2BI Investor. And they're going to all do a little brief introduction about themselves, and then we're going to kind of dig in and get to the meat of the conversation. So, Sherry, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, help me decide how much you want to know. My name is Sherry Van Cleve.
This could be a short one.
I work at Gibraltar Ventures. We are the Innovation Lab and Venture Capital Group for Prudential.
Oh, all right. That was very short.
You said short. I mean, I can go Gary style, but I'm not sure that's approved.
That's good. Well, my next question, you'll tell more.
All right. My name is Shannon St. Val, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Your Financial Lane. And we're trying to disrupt the way personal financial advising is currently being done by making it more affordable and accessible to everyday people like you guys. And we're doing it via providing on-demand text messaging services to our live, real financial advisor, and also through in-person group sessions. Just before my starting this company, I was a financial regulator and a risk consultant for KPMG. So I've worked with a lot of the big banks, investment management firms, and been in the space for about 10 years.
Krista.
Hi, everyone. I just want to start by saying this is the first FinTech panel I've ever been on that was all women ever. And I've been on a lot of them, so just recognize how great that is. So I'm Krista Morgan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of P2B Investor. We're providing $1 million lines of credit to growing companies in a marketplace lending model.
So Krista did steal my thunder. I was going to mention that after the last panel, we kind of proof is in the pudding on this stage with all the women we have up here. But thanks, Krista. So Sherry, kind of going to dive in with you first. Want us to tell the audience a little bit about Gibraltar Ventures and what you're doing there, kind of what is the mission and how long it's been around, and when did it get started?
Yeah. So Prudential, we're kind of an old company. Gibraltar Ventures is a startup within Prudential. We're about a year old as an entity. So I was part of the founding members about a year ago. And we focus on strategic investments in the FinTech space. And when we don't see something that's a startup that's doing something we'd like to invest in, then we also have an innovation lab that builds that. Our preference is to find startups and to invest in those. I think we have 8 in our portfolio from just the first year series of investments. Our mission is to help people pursue their ambitions, and that's something we kind of hold dear to our hearts. It's like what draws people to Gibraltar Ventures. It's not just a saying that we have, and that's true of Prudential generally, and we look to do that by finding solutions that are really empathetic. So some kind of nice gender diversity and general not being homogenous, I think, leads into those kinds of empathetic solutions and creative solutions, as well as things that embrace technological finesse. I think, if we get into the panel, things that we like to think about are how do we bring really startup creative solutions back into a very an organization with significant heritage. And there are two things that people often ask me: are we always investing in things that we can bring back into the organization? The answer is no. Sometimes we do. We want to help our organizations that we invest in scale. So a great example is Student Loan Genius, the student debt solution that we're taking back to employers today. But we also invest in some startups just because we think that they're doing something really meaningful for people that we're trying to serve, and that we don't have financial solutions that are doing that today. So we put money behind that as well.
So, Krista and Shannon both are in startups, so I think it's kind of like a nice juxtaposition to hear what was the impetus for them for kind of starting what they're doing, and how companies like Sherry might actually help them along the way, perhaps. So, Krista, if you could tell me, what got you into you're in the factoring business, so if you could tell me kind of when this plane is no longer overhead. Did I tell you there was going to be drones here today? Yeah.
All right.
Take it away.
How we got started. So I have a great background for a FinTech company because I come from marketing. So that's what everyone wants to see. I worked in digital marketing for a long time. Came across this idea that people could lend to other people that I just thought was really awesome and interesting, and that we could sort of take some institutions out of the middle and make things more efficient. And then I learned about factoring, and for those of you that don't know what factoring is, basically the practice of buying invoices to give early stage companies access to financing. And it's a really old school industry, and as I learned about it, I said, I'm pretty sure we can make this better. And so I quit my job and moved to Denver and started a FinTech company, as you do.
As one does when they work in advertising. But I think you might get into how you've been really succeeding with it and doing very well. So maybe we'll get to that after we learn about Shannon's backstory, because I think you've got an interesting one as well.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I was a financial regulator, and frankly, I was frustrated with the whole industry and the way financial advising was really being done, because I felt that a lot of my peers had great jobs but were still living paycheck to paycheck, and they didn't have a financial advisor, but they needed one, and the incentives of most financial advisors are not necessarily aligned with, their customers. And so I really wanted to solve that problem and make it more accessible to everyday people. So yeah, that's how I kind of got started. It was a service that I needed, I know my peers needed, and I felt that there was a huge demand for it. So yeah.
Great. And it's been going well so far. You've got a lot of people who are utilizing the platform and the group messaging.
Yep.
You were telling me about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great. So Sherry, you're kind of listening to them talk about their startups here and the missions that they have. You're hearing from people like this every single day, and they are sending you their pitch decks, and they're calling you. And how do you decide who to fund? How do you decide what looks like a good company for your portfolio? What kind of goes into some of those decisions? And maybe there's some people in the audience who would like to know the answer to that.
I think it's really easy to decide at the point of figuring out if something is strategically aligned or not. Like even just hearing their pitches before we got on the stage, I can figure out which one makes sense for an organization like Prudential that's trying to grow people's assets, protect people's assets, reach more into middle America. We've got a texting solution that's doing that, that's really well aligned. We have a lending solution that I think probably fits a different kind of venture capital firm. But once you have that superficial, okay, I can figure out what is strategically makes sense for us against our interests that we're trying to invest in, I think it's so much more nuanced. The things that we talk about all the time after a pitch call is, did we like that person? That comes up on every single call. Like, I didn't like that person. I did like that person. And that really comes down to authenticity, something that I see represented in both of these fantastic individuals. A great example, yesterday we were listening to a pitch from a woman who's incredible. She's doing a great job. And when we would find issues, right, in this company that she's built, we find issues in the data. We think that users aren't interacting a way that we would like to see them interact. Anybody who's looking to fund you is going to call that out and ask that question, which we did. And she acknowledged it, figured out, A, I don't have marketing skills on my team, and I need to get marketing skills on my team. And B, when we launched this first app, we did it wrong. We did it white label, and this is a banker. These banks don't know how to do something that they can market on their own, so we need to build the brand ourselves and not do white label next time. The first one she learned, hey, lesson learned, and I'll share that with you. The second one she shared was, I just need skills that I don't have. Those are really authentic answers. And all the time I'll hear people trying to cover something up, like inflate numbers, not share, we have this many, it's an amazing set of users. Okay, but when was the last time they were on their site? How much time were they spending on the site? What's their re-engagement levels? And they try to hide it. You can see that, and it totally diminishes the trust, and it's just something that you're not going to find in a partner.
Really comes down to personality then.
There's just a big deal in terms of who you're going to fund. And for us as an organization, you heard me say, like, we're heart people. We want to fund people who are helping other people achieve in their ambitions. So we need to know that you're really intentional about doing that yourself. And I think that comes down to your character, your integrity. That stuff matters.
And certainly what you were saying before, like everything your institution does is about saving. So this is about, people that have good intentions and are doing the right thing.
I think the only other thing I would add is differentiation. There's a lot of spots at FinTech, you guys know, there's a lot of money in FinTech right now. And there's not enough differentiation. So if I hear about the next robo-advisor group that's pitching me, or the next financial literacy group, or the next it's easy to save using my texting situation, or rounding up, or whatever it is, you need to tell me, you really need to differentiate that. And it's surprising, what I'm saying sounds so obvious to all of you, and it's surprising how many people don't strongly differentiate in the pitch process.
Yeah. So now that you've kind of heard from Sherry, I know you both have a couple of stories about your own fundraising process, and especially in the FinTech space and the financial space in general. Krista, you kind of shared some stuff with me that's been a kind of a challenge for you. So maybe if you want to touch on that a little bit and your own personal experience there.
Yeah, obviously, fundraising is hard. Fundraising is hard for every company, and frankly, it should be hard, right? If it were, it's the fundraising process and the fact that it's difficult and the fact that you have to learn to differentiate and really be clear on your message is good for your business, and it's gonna, help you be a better leader. I think one of the big challenges in FinTech, especially, is that you have all the challenge. Well, so let me say, in lending FinTech, you have all the challenges of sales and marketing and operations, and then you have credit risk. So all the regular business risks plus credit risk. And it's really, and it makes investors really nervous. So you find yourself going to very specialist FinTech investors, and then you're just always getting up in challenges. You're either too much like the competitors or not enough like the competitors. So we took the view that we actually didn't go the VC route. We're just closing another angel round. We're $8 million of angel funding, 150 investors, which has its ups and its downs. But what I'll tell you is that it's just a strategy that's working for me. It may not work forever, and it may not work for everyone, but it's you don't have to go the traditional route. You just have to, find what works for your business.
My experience, I'm actually kind of a rookie to the whole raising money experience. I just recently started, and I would say one thing that was extremely surprising to me was how time-consuming it is. So on one hand, I'm trying to build this business, trying to build users, literally the Jack Jill of all things. And in addition to that, trying to spend hours just understanding and getting in front of the right people. So I'd say the most surprising part is just how time-consuming it can be. So if you're going to raise funds, get ready for that.
And where do you guys kind of see this FinTech market going? I mean, we're kind of in it, and you're all touching on a little bit of a different aspect of it. I mean, you're in lending, you're helping people with savings, you're on a kind of a cross section in your portfolio. So I guess what do you see as what is sort of successful right now, and where do you kind of see this whole industry going next?
Personally, I just wish there were more people trying to address, and this is, I guess, why I'm doing this, right? The one-on-one advising or the touch point. I think a lot of the FinTech is very much so not as much of that personal touch, and that's what I'm
too
trying.
Much technology.
Too much technology
in FinTech,
Yeah.
in financial technology. Too much technology.
But with it, you kind of need that personal touch. But there's so much room for growth, and I think there's a lot of possibilities in the space.
Well, I brought this up before the panel. I'll say it's not been a great week for marketplace lending. Anyone who's familiar with the space, there's been a lot of all three of the big companies in the lending space have been delivering a lot of bad news to the market. So there's been a lot of predictions of the death of FinTech, which I don't think is true at all. And I think, so from my perspective on the lending side, there is still a ton of room for disruption in that trying to extend credit to people that don't qualify for regulated bank money. I think there's still a lot of room for innovation in that. However, I think as FinTech companies, we're just going to start to see that saying what the banks have done is not working and we're going to kind of start all over again is not the way, right? You have to really innovate on what does work. You have to learn from the lessons of the past, and really just make sure you can say that you're a good steward of people's money. That you ultimately, as a FinTech company, are often you need to have trust. You need to really embody that trust.
Sherry.
Yeah, the FinTech space.
You can say what's working now.
I agree with you completely regarding FinTech, that a lot of people like to predict the demise of funding in general at FinTech. It's been a bubble, whatever. But if you just look at the solutions out there, we don't have the right solutions out there. It is hard for every one of us to do everyday budgeting at an accessible level, and that has not been solved. There's not a great example out there in the marketplace. That's a huge thing. All of the upscale companies serve top-end markets with financial products. That's a huge problem. What you brought up, user experience, empathy, not being there in terms of the human interaction, huge problem. And we've got student loan debts. We've got 401k being the only source of retirement as pensions come down. Huge problems. So when there's huge problems, there's a market to solve those problems. So I'm not worried about whether or not there's a bubble in the short term. I'm looking at the long term, and this is a huge, huge area of opportunity. I think two areas that are hot right now. One, I mentioned it already, it's going downstream. So you see Goldman Sachs doing that with savings accounts, with things that people can invest in that an everyday person can have that gives them a higher interest rate than normal. I think that's a huge telling sign and fantastic, and you're going to see more and more institutions doing that. Generally, you see that the startups are doing it. Now you're going to see big institutions following suit, and that's going to impact the startup marketplace as well. The other place that I think is interesting, InsurTech, huge. InsurTech and FinTech both seeing regulations. Uber can do its own thing with regulations, that's one thing. But when it comes to financial services, you're not going to be able to get away with the same kind of thing, cutting corners in regulations. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of good reasons for that. But it also means there's a huge opportunity around regulation innovation. So there's some companies that are actually, and I see this more in Europe than in the States, that are beginning to make it easier for companies to comply with regulations. And that's super interesting because now you have a solution both for startups and for big institutions. So I think those are some of the areas that I'm looking forward to seeing in FinTech this next year.
Fantastic. Well, I'd actually like to give the audience a chance to ask you guys one question because we've got just a few seconds left. So is there anyone in the audience that has a question for our panelists? Or, okay, I've got, could you guys bring him a mic? We're going to just bring you a mic. If you could just stand up. I like audience participation and making people feel like they're part of the panel.
This view behind you guys is amazing right now. I am loving looking out at you. It's fantastic.
Hi, thank you all for your time. I'm just wondering, it's a broad swath of what FinTech is about, and how much you individually or in the industry as a whole rely upon behavioral science, behavioral economics, and that, because it's particularly when it comes to individual interaction.
I love that question.
That's why I asked the audience.
We do a ton in the behavioral science space. We partner with academics at Harvard, at UCLA, on a research side, and then we actually bring that research and do a bunch to test it. Like, we've got all sorts of ads going out right now in terms of language that people respond to and language that people don't respond to. This is a big thing for us, because we believe that if we can crack the code on better behavioral science integration into the financial enterprises, that we can actually build stronger platforms that groups like Prudential can land across, and that we can give to all of our startups. Because if we crack the code on how do we bring sentiment into financial decision making, we can give that to all the startups that we're funding and enable all of them to be a lot more capable in terms of what they're doing.
Did either of you want to attempt to talk about behavioral science, or is that not part of your ecosystem?
I mean, when it comes to money, it's like it's a habit, right? So behavior science really plays in. So her response was perfect to it. But yeah, it's a big piece of the whole personal financial space, FinTech space.
One of my favorite aspects of behavioral science that I'm looking into right now is the idea of like keeping your savings from yourself, like you do with cookies. If you're trying to go on a diet, you just throw them in the garbage. You have to get them out of the house. You can't have the option, right? And right now, if you've got a savings account, for the everyday person, it's way too easy to put that into your checking account. You need a way to get the options away, to like lock that money away from yourself. That's an example of how behavioral science is impacting products that we're creating.
All right, I think we could add one more in the audience, and then that's a wrap. So make it a good one.
Hey, I was just curious, are cryptocurrencies a play for any of your organizations? You're funding in, what you're going to do with them?
So for us, blockchain is of interest from a smart contract perspective, the insurance side of Prudential.
That can't get away with a FinTech panel without that question.
Yeah, it hasn't come up. They're starting to do I've seen some new lending startups coming up in this space, and there's certainly the technology behind it. Like our CTO, there are lots of all the technologists getting together trying to say, how do we apply this technology into the space? But I wouldn't say it's been a huge focus for us at all.
All right, well, can we have a big round of applause for our lovely panelists?
Thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience, and we'll all be kind of sticking around for a few minutes if you would like to come say hi to us. And